Even after a decade of planned trusting and developing a thicker skin to survive the outrages of the day, the arrows are still penetrating. We are taking all of these arrows as plan trusters for the last few weeks, maybe even the last few months. I mean, there's, of course, the confusion around the Epstein files, how those are being handled. Now there's this comment about visas in the Laura Ingraham interview. There's the 50-year mortgage proposal. There's the Iran strike, which obviously, while not having escalated to freaking World War III like people were predicting at the time, it still shook people. It shook people's confidence in an administration which, advertised itself during the campaign as being anti-war, no new wars, things of that nature. And now, every time we see the president on television, it seems like he's very excited about things like constructing ballrooms, leaving his mark on the country, his mark on history, having these meetings with different world leaders, which is very, important and very typical of a second administration president, a second-term president. But I think we must affectionately remind our president that none of this is going to matter. I mean, the left is going to undo all of this. Like, we don't want history to remember Trump as the guy who came close to saving America, but then ultimately couldn't do it. Like, we have to finish that job, and then we're going to get the ballrooms, and we'll get the stadiums, and we'll get the holidays. I promise you we'll get the holidays. We'll get statues. We will get all of that. And so even though of his 20 stated campaign promises, the only ones at this point that are still up in the air are keeping the dollar as the global reserve currency, and then the last one, number 20, uniting the country by bringing about record levels of success. Those are the ones that remain to be seen. Everything else has either happened or is happening right now. Would we like it to happen faster? Absolutely. Why wouldn't we? However, we also have to understand that we are essentially cold starting a machine that hasn't been running for decades, or in many cases that has been built specifically to oppose the measures that we're attempting to take. And so it's not as simple as just doing it. These things are going to take a little bit more time. Mass deportations, people are saying that's not happening. National rent prices are decreasing at a rate not seen in something like 15 years. Okay, well, why do you think that's happening? Rent prices themselves are part of how we actually calculated the real number of illegal aliens being something closer to 30 or 40 million back in 2015, rather than the 11 million figure that we've been hearing for 30 years. Prices are now going down. National rent prices are now going down at a rate we haven't seen before. It's okay, so what do you think is happening there? Support for Israel, despite strong-arming a ceasefire, the cost of political capital, which is quite tremendous, it doesn't really bring us anything. That's been bringing us a lot of arrows for patriots, right? The clear pill on that being that, it costs us a lot of political capital because of how unpopular the Israeli state is, and we're not really getting anything out of that support, if at all. Even with, support from evangelicals who famously are very pro-Israel, even they've transformed very interestingly during the Trump era. They've demonstrated, actually, that they will vote for Trump, who is not as concerned with, the traditional evangelical must-haves, being very pro-life, being very pro-Israel. They will vote for Trump over someone like Ted Cruz, who is, of course, far more concerned with those things than Trump, who's far more outspoken about those things than Trump is, but they'll still vote for Trump over that guy. And he's more or less aligned with those positions. Obviously, Trump, he is how he is, but that doesn't make them, central to his politics the way they would be with a traditional evangelical politician. So there's a lot of questions here. What is the future of MAGA? Should there be a future for MAGA? Is Trump actually turning his back on us? Did he do this a while ago and we've just been too stupid to detect it? Was it all rigged from the start? Did they just finally figure out how to drive an effective wedge between Trump and his supporters after a decade of trying to create this MAGA Civil War? We will answer every conceivable question from every conceivable angle. Do stay tuned. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the John Doyle Show. We will be talking a little bit more about the John Doyle Show, why we had to do away with heck off commies, since hecking off commies became official U.S. government policy, literally as a matter of stated policy. And so we had to make a little bit of a transition to greatness. We'll be answering all your questions about the new programming, what the plan is, all of that stuff. I'll explain all of it at the end of our discussion on how to properly navigate reality, because that is very important. Now, before we depart, let's make sure that we have our charts correct here. We have to wind the clocks back a little bit, understand where we're at in the year of our Lord 2025. And the reason, by the way, that we'll be talking about this probably all week, we'll be talking about it today, despite this, being about Trump's Hell Week, we'll call it last week. There's not really much else going on in the news right now, right? And the reason for that is obviously that the people who decide what the news is are loving nothing more than what they're seeing right now. Nothing more than what they're calling the MAGA Civil War. This is the most transparent op I've seen in my 7 years of doing this. And we'll talk more about that. We'll answer all the questions. But I do want to kind of just point out that the reason this is happening is because these people are on the back foot. These people are under attack. They're backed into a corner. We understood this because of the Charlie Kirk assassination. We'll be talking more about the sort of patterns of leftist terrorism throughout the last 100 years when these people feel like they're being backed into a corner. That is what is happening right now. These people are lashing out. That is why they no longer discuss the issues. That's why we no longer have to memorize facts about climate change and gun policy and things like that. For the last 5 years, all these things, or all that these people have talked about, has basically been our democracy and immigrants, which is to say our democracy, free and fair elections, persecuting J6 patriots, immigrants, these poor freaking brown bodies that are being unlawfully deported. They're literally getting due process being deported. Before the MAGA Civil War, all that was on television was videos of these people getting due process, being lawfully deported because they're in the country illegally. We're all supposed to be really sad about that and like cry about it. So it is under attack. It is defending itself. That's what this is. They're backed into a corner. They used to discuss the issues. When they were on the offensive, they discussed climate change. They discussed gun control, healthcare policy. That has not occurred at scale in years. So thank you, Donald Trump, for just that. But they are on the back foot defending the mechanisms that keep them in power. That is what our democracy is. What do free and fair elections mean? What does allowing everybody to vote because freaking democracy mean? It means total leftist domination, more power to the left, consolidating power for the left, crushing patriots. What does immigration mean? What does opening the borders both legally and illegally mean? The same thing. So that for the last 5 years, all we've heard about are those two things is a sign that, yes, these people are under attack. That is how they view themselves. They view themselves to be on the defensive. They view themselves to be on the back foot. So even though we have been taking arrows, even though we have seen like a series of pretty syndicated and disastrous messaging, that does not actually change where we're at right now in 2025, which is a much better place than we were in 2022, in 2020, in 2015, and certainly a much better place now than we ever imagined we would be. So again, that does not mean that we cannot criticize the president. That does not mean that we can't be upset about the trajectory where things are at. However, let's just like begin that way, right? Before we walk across the tightrope, let's make sure that we've got a good head on our shoulders. Let's be balanced. Let's be fair. Okay, we want the clear pill. So that being said, the MAGA Civil War does provide a pretty good opportunity, I think, to talk about this like emerging trajectory on the right. This what they're calling a new right, what they're calling maybe a post-Trump right. I think it's a good time to talk about all of that. So we're going to have a good conversation about it. Because it does, again, seem like there is this new consensus emerging in the second Trump admin. I got this completely wrong, by the way. I thought that people would want to enjoy victory and that this kind of stuff wouldn't really be so important to them. That turned out to be actually exactly wrong, and people have not assimilated to victory very well. And rather than just kind of like own liberals and laugh, people are very ready to continue the anxiety that they were experiencing when we were losing, bring it into when we are winning, and just find things to essentially panic about, I believe. But again, we will address all of it. So think about where we were in 2024, why these people might be on the back foot. Again, you can have your criticisms. You can think that things are going bad right now. Why might Democrats disagree? Why might they think that they're actually on the defensive? Republicans won decisively in 2024. We took the House, we took the Senate, we took the presidency, we controlled the Supreme Court. Donald Trump at that time was facing dozens of criminal charges. If he lost the election, he would have spent his life in prison. He would have been killed in prison. That's what they were crossing their fingers for. And he ended up beating every single one of those charges. And so when this happened, lots of conservative commentators, they very confidently proclaimed that we are in the middle of a vibe shift. Conservatives are now the smart, cool, funny ones. And that means that I'm the smart, cool, funny one too. They were very confident about all of this. But as we've seen in the last week or so, the last few months or so, our beloved president has been a little on the ropes. Things are maybe not going so hot right now. You had the recent elections in Virginia and New Jersey, which were massive defeats. Trump has made a series of very bad statements on immigration, on affordability, homes. There's the whole Epstein files thing. There are tons of headlines, again, about the Trump Civil War, MAGA Civil War, the Trump coalition fracturing. And every single genius on Twitter has declared that MAGA is already dead or it's limping along. It will be dead soon if Trump doesn't immediately do XYZ, whatever my pet issue is, etc. So the panicans are emerging from the woodwork. They're coming out of all corners, and a lot of good people are starting to crack. I don't blame them for that. I understand the feelings that people are experiencing. I understand that things may seem as though they're closing in on us finally. And I don't think at this point it's possible for morale to be lower than it is. I remember how I felt with the Syria strikes in 2017. I remember how I felt during J6 in 2020 with Stop the Steal. I remember how I felt in fall 2022. I remember how I felt in 2021 when everybody was doing the same thing right now except talking about how DeSantis is the future. I remember all of that. I have been around long enough at this point to recognize this kind of op when I see it, and it is an op, which we can talk more about mechanically as the week continues. That being said, it is also true that I don't think that morale has been lower at any point in the last 10 years for patriots than it is right now. So I am here to tell you, and I believe this. I believe this from the bottom of my heart, that all of these people are stupid and none of this is going to matter in 2 weeks and no one will remember any of it anyway. That is my stated position. That is right. I'm still a planican. I'm still a plan truster, and I'm proud of it, frankly. The MAGA hat stays on. There was no asterisk on that. I was never going to keep the MAGA hat on. It stays on. Always have the MAGA. And then, well, there's a scenario where if somebody on Twitter says something, then maybe I'm going to decide it's over, and I'm going to light it on fire, and I'm going to talk about how Trump freaking betrayed us so that I can get freaking oop votes. Not going to happen. I'm in line. I'm staying in line, and I'm not leaving for anything. A lot of people today, big accounts, small accounts, big names, small names, they're just revealing themselves to be lightweights. They're liars, or otherwise they're just like not ready for this level of politics. I really believe that a lot of these people would be better off just taking up a hobby like sports betting. You know, people who have been talking, I don't want to use profane language in the sense that on the chance that our 7%ers are watching, but I've taken up the strategy of just sending these people like DraftKings gift cards, because I think that they would actually be better suited doing something like that, pursuing a more normie kind of hobby or use of their time, because clearly like they're just getting confused and it's causing them a lot of stress and anxiety dealing with like what is the most ambitious political project in any of our lifetimes. It seems to be causing them a lot of unnecessary stress and anxiety, and so it would actually be cruel to them to keep them in this environment. And that's exactly what this period is. We cannot have subversives. We cannot have lightweights. This is one of the most chaotic periods in our country's history. We are totally restructuring the American government. We are totally restructuring the American economy, America's place in the world. There are challenges so big on the horizon, so scary, you could not even conceive of them. If you looked at them, you would become an insane person. It's like a Lovecraftian entity that's just like staring into your soul and driving you insane. And so all this like current hysteria is doing is revealing the nature of mankind. It's revealing that when hard times actually arrive, people just lose their minds. They lose their minds and they can't be counted on to do anything but like make the situation worse. And I realize that this is not popular. I realize I'm doing myself like not a ton of favors, we'll say, in terms of the perception. I understand this is like opposite of what most people are saying. I know it's not going to be popular at the moment. The most popular thing I could do if I were purely self-interested is to come out and say that freaking Trump betrayed me and we need to start a new movement. And here's the real way forward. People love that. They loved it in 2017. They loved it in 2021. They loved it in 2022. They love it now. Some things never change, right? So I understand all of that. However, I am in business to tell the truth about America to Americans specifically, and all these people who never supported Trump to begin with are going to get angry. That's fine. But if you are someone who actually wants to save our country, I ask you, before you tell me to hurt myself, I ask you to at least hear me out. Let's be gentlemen about this. Hear me out. If you're already a planican, I hope that I can convince you tonight that you're not alone. You are vindicated. You're a genius, patriot, hero, wizard, legend, navigator, general, sorcerer, insanely brilliant person, way ahead of your time, 200 IQ. And if unfortunately you are a panican, I hope that I can convince you of the error in your ways. And if you're undecided, which is your prerogative, perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable, I hope that I can convince you to join us. So we have to wind the clocks back. We have to start about what kind of triggered the hell week for Trump in many ways, the elections in New Jersey and Virginia. This kicked off a very bad week for patriots. So New Jersey first, it's a little bit simpler there. Nearly all the polling in New Jersey indicated that the election was like unusually close. It was suspiciously close, which it also was during 2024. Republicans seemed to have a really strong candidate. He looked like what AI would produce if you just kind of like told it what a New Jersey politician should look like. Democrats seemed to have a really weak candidate who likewise looked like if you gave an AI a prompt, like create this like nagging pantsuit woman, it would just kind of like spit this person out, you know, the same kind of like brain dead, nagging woman who's been trying to just like lecture our country to death for decades, in the vein of Hillary Clinton, in the vein of Kamala Harris. So Republican turnout in New Jersey was actually like unusually good in terms of the effort that was put into it. They managed to dramatically increase turnout when compared to the last gubernatorial election in 2021. And New Jersey's been a Democrat stronghold for decades, obviously. And so elections there aren't supposed to be competitive. So that it was said to be competitive was supposed to be a good sign for patriots. That means, there's not like a huge amount of money and trained staff connected to the local Republican Party. However, it seemed to be pretty good. So that was a good sign for us. And they really overperformed with the limited resources that they had. They were helped out at the last minute by organizations like Turning Point USA. So everything seemed to be going very good for patriots. It seemed like we were kind of riding a wave that was never going to crash. And despite these successes, Democrats won decisively. It was a blowout. It wasn't even close at all. The race was called within an hour. Some Fox News Arizona kind of business. So what does this mean? Were the polls just wrong? Were they freaking lying except for us this time? Was it fortified? I think Republicans just didn't show up in large enough numbers to win the election, whereas the Democrats did. I actually think the polls were completely accurate. Support for both candidates was probably around 49-48 until the very last minute. And the problem was the Democrats, half of that actually showed up, whereas large chunks of the Republican half, which maybe, were persuaded to vote Republican, they seem to think that's a good idea. It's at least optional. They didn't show up. I mean, they think that their support for those ideas is alone a kind of political action or represents some kind of progress. And they're satisfied with that being the extent of their involvement. They're satisfied with watching or engaging with Republican content on Facebook or on Instagram or on YouTube. They're so used to just being beaten down into submission by Democrats and the media, coworker politics, their relatives. They really believe that they are supporting the cause by simply engaging with online content. But when it comes to actually showing up to vote, they seem to be often less motivated to do that, which seemed to be the case in New Jersey, unfortunately for patriots. So that all just becomes more clear when you look at what happened in Virginia. And by the way, I'm not gonna defend the Republican candidate for governor there. By all accounts, this is just this really dumb and cringe woman. She would unironically post these black people invented a computer made out of peanuts kinds of images on Facebook and, post about people being really racist and sexist when they criticized her in any way. She even hated Trump. She was a liability or called Trump a liability in 2022. When Trump was already getting attacked by the Biden regime, by the rest of people in the party, blah, blah, blah. Now she tries to tie herself to Trump's popular and successful agenda. Just a few months ago, when it becomes clear that her poll numbers before the election were catastrophic, again, it's Virginia. What are you going to do? The point being, this is exactly the kind of moderate DEI clown, political establishment product that Republicans think is going to appeal to minorities, but then it ends up just appealing to nobody at all. You're never going to pander better than the Democrats, right? You're never going to have a Republican candidate who can pander to minorities better than the Democrat candidate. And so you're not getting more minorities than you would because now you're softer on all these other issues that your base likes anyway. And so you're just losing because the minorities are going to be okay, well, this guy's going to give me everything that I want. And this guy's giving me 10% of what I want, which I guess is better than 0% of what I want. But still, I'm going to go with this person who's giving me everything I want. And then your actual base, the people who actually show up to vote for you and 85 out of 100 votes cast are okay, this person kind of sucks actually and doesn't reflect my value. So horrible strategy. We've been running it for decades to no avail. Anyway, however bad the governor's race looked, we were given a gift in Virginia because somebody leaked a few of Democrat Attorney General candidate Jay Jones' text messages from 2022, where apparently he was talking about killing conservative legislators, literally just killing their children to prove some generic Dem political point. This wasn't even a, radical solutions require radical means kind of thing. It was literally just oh, you don't agree with my libtard bumper sticker? Okay, what if I killed you and your whole family? This is a normal, median Democrat in this is 2022. 2025, things have gotten more radical. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's understandable or normal. I'm just saying, imagine how fucked up you have to be if this is 2022 and this is the position you're taking. Joe Biden's in office. You guys control the White House, and still you're you're not sharing my Occupy Dems posts on Facebook. I'm gonna kill you and your kids. So he came across as a totally insane person. And after Charlie Kirk's murder, which liberals, including people at really high levels, endorsed or justified or even incited, conservatives rightly pointed to this scandal as part of this larger normalization of deranged leftist violence that increasingly is being acted upon in the real world. So the Republican Attorney General candidate began polling well above Jason Jones. Everyone from political journalists to betting markets, everybody thought that at least we're going to get the AG position, right? That's a lock for Republicans because of this overwhelming outrage. We might lose the governorship. We probably will lose that, but at least we're going to get the Attorney General spot. The problem is all of that outrage that Republicans had, that was all it was. It was just outrage. They didn't actually do anything about that outrage. They just had the opinion. They possessed the opinion and that was enough for them. Just like New Jersey, I think the polls were probably entirely accurate. It's likely that 10% more of the general public wanted the Republican to win over the Democrat. The problem was the Republican turnout in the Virginia election just wasn't that good, which one might expect when you're having, I don't know, a bad candidate like Sears. Like, yeah, it's probably going to be a complete disaster. But the defeat even extended to previously safe Republican areas. It caused huge problems in local races that actually affect people's lives. You know, school boards, judgeships, prosecutors' offices, things of that nature. And Virginia had a Republican governor beforehand. You can't blame this failure on, just the state being impossible to win. We just had a Republican governor in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. I mean, this is recent. We all know this guy's name. And when the situation is grim and when things look like they're down to the wire, Democrats show up. They show up in unusually large numbers that their opponents apparently are just like not willing or able to match. Now, Republicans are not going to have a governor in Virginia. Instead, they're going to have like a literal CIA agent as their governor. They're going to have a chief law enforcement official who talked about murdering their children. And there's a phenomenon that I kind of want everyone to know about. In the movies, right? In the Marvel movies, when times get tough, people like rise to the occasion and they freaking like beat the evil bad guys. That's why you see people online talking about accelerationism, making the situation worse so that people wake up and they rise up and they freaking win, because I saw it on TV. I saw it in a movie that when things get bad, people realize how bad they are and they get angry. And then the righteous masses, after being oppressed and abused, wake up and defeat the evil bad guy regime, like in a movie, like in the Hunger Games. I'm here to tell you that's not actually how the world works. In reality, people who are sad, who are scared or stressed out, who have dispositions towards those states, they actually become passive in response to problems that they face. Read any book. It will tell you one of the most important things in war is morale. Demoralized troops move slower. They don't fight as hard. When they encounter the enemy, even when they may have a decent or maybe even a better chance of success than the enemy, they are far more likely to surrender or to run away. Once someone's confidence is shaken, they lose the ability to perceive the situation accurately and to respond accordingly. They start to doubt themselves. They're not themselves anymore. They don't even know who they are anymore. They're an insane person. And there are a lot of things draining Republicans' morale lately, even beyond the electoral defeats. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not lying to you. The Trump administration's messaging has been incredibly bad for the last week at least. He pushed back on a decent question about H-1B visas from Laura Ingraham. He seemed to suggest that Americans didn't have the skills to handle jobs taken by foreign workers. He appeared to dismiss totally reasonable concerns about the state of the economy, buying houses, affordability, which still, this is not great for regular people. He made a series of clumsy statements about the Epstein files, connecting them to the government shutdown. These rhetorical fumbles went beyond Trump. It was the DHS secretary, Kristi Noem. She's pointing, to the successes of the Trump admin on immigration. True, but then she's also claiming that we're naturalizing more people than ever before. Just these completely avoidable pitfalls. I'm not going to defend this messaging. This is bad messaging. It's really, really bad messaging. If you are a leader and you say something that makes people lose confidence in you, much less sends them into this complete meltdown that makes them want to just sprint off a cliff, kind of like we're seeing right now, that is a failure in its own right, especially if it relates to core issues of the Trump political project, like immigration and affordability, both of which being necessary to make America great again. I am, however, going to take the position that it actually doesn't matter at all, and all the Trump supporters who are declaring defeat and issuing these ultimatums, otherwise telling people that they're just going to quit, abandon ship, I'm going to tear all my hair out over these bad statements, they're really just doing themselves and the country, and of course our beloved leader, President Donald Trump, just a tremendous disservice. They are not actually making the world closer to what they claim they would like it to be like. And just for your own personal record, just so you know, Trump was specifically talking about temporary training visas for nice civilized countries like Japan, like South Korea. Not exactly the same thing as opening up the floodgates illegally or legally and just letting immigrants come in from the third world to pick at the bones of our birthright. It's a bad soundbite. He snapped at a female interviewer. He made bad messaging out of it. It was a bad clip, bad optics. It is what it is. But I'll take a lifetime of unprecedented progress on issues that matter with the occasional moment like this, which makes it hard to be a plan truster. That's a fair deal for me. The backlash for how Trump phrased this, it's warranted. I get that. I'm not denying that. But also we have to remember, if we're just assessing the situation honestly, he rammed an $100,000 fee through for H-1B applicants via executive order. which no one else would have done. So at the end of the day, you get more of what you want if you don't spurg out and remove yourself from the conversation and flip the table and declare everything to be over. And the real next move for us is to go like cozy up to liberals and support liberals. We elected Trump to save our country. If Kamala Harris had won, we would have gotten amnesty for illegals. We would have gotten mass gun confiscation, generally total defeat, low morale. There's no aspect of your life that would have gotten better if Kamala had won. Everything would have gotten worse. Exactly what happened with Biden would have happened at a scale incomprehensible to patriots at this time. That was on the line. We did not elect Trump because we thought he was never going to make mistakes. He was never going to make missteps or blunders or say something stupid. I don't think there's any president who could meet that standard. We knew what we were signing up for. That doesn't mean that we have to like endorse and excuse everything that Trump does. It just means that when these things happen, we have to treat them like adults. Because if we don't, we risk losing a lot of very important things. We actually have skin in the game. There are actually things that are at stake for us. You know, everybody wants to like trust the plan when things are going really well and we're getting what we want. People think that trusting the plan means like looking at what we're getting and everything going well and being like, ha, more of that. I trust that we'll probably get more of that. This is fun. Trusting the plan means when things are like really bad, you have to just kind of keep your head down and be like, okay, it's probably going to get better. And that's really the only mentality you can have because there's no other game in town. You have no other choice. You have no other candidate. You have nothing else. You know, you're not going to start a third political party. Trump is the only game in town. So you can either work towards improving that political project, getting a law degree, joining that political project, doing whatever, or you can spurg out and bitch and freak out and piss yourself and vomit and like do whatever. Like those are basically troon out. Those are your two options as far as I'm concerned. And he's delivered a lot for us already on immigration alone. I mean, illegal border crossings have effectively dropped to zero. There are more than 10,000 new immigration enforcement officials who are in training right now, who I think we're going to start seeing trickle out in January because it takes like, a year to train these people. Bad immigration judges are being removed. They're being replaced. ICE has basically occupied several American cities to stage high-profile immigration raids. Enormous new fees are being imposed on some of the worst kinds of visas. For the first time in decades, the foreign-born population is going to be net negative. Trump has delivered bigger victories for immigration skeptics than any other president in our lifetimes. And the people who are supposedly, the most passionate about immigration are also the quickest to throw him under the bus. They're the quickest to condemn him whenever he makes a mistake. It's just not helpful. And oftentimes the mistakes are purely rhetorical, by the way, and Trump is just like describing something that doesn't actually reflect what is happening or the actual policy, or it's a part of negotiations. It's not a real thing. It's not tangible. It's not actually material. It's just Trump saying words that are scaring people because what if the words translate into action that we don't like, even though they never do? So again, constantly freaking out is not actually like being principled or providing, essential feedback. It's ultimately just harming yourself. Tantrums make it harder to get what you want. And what was the response to the tantrum? What was the response to this feeding frenzy created by these election defeats, by Trump's bad statements? A bunch of Republican state legislatures that had planned to redistrict, which would give Republicans a better chance at winning the House in 2026. Well, suddenly they started to freak out. They were wavering. They were like, oh man, I guess people really don't like Trump. I guess maybe we don't actually have to measure ourselves and our chances of being reelected by attaching ourselves to Trump's agenda. I guess maybe we don't have to listen to this guy and move forward with redistricting plans. I guess, this guy's not really very popular. He's not going to be around much longer. I guess maybe we don't have to redistrict. We don't have to assist him in implementing his agenda. He needs that to be able to implement his agenda. By the way, redistricting, he needs to be able to push laws through Congress. We're in this like weird position where people are upset, because Trump is perceived as like not doing enough on important issues like immigration, but then their response is to contribute to political conditions such as attacking Trump, undermining party discipline, party loyalty, spurging out, where now it's actually harder for them to get what they nominally want now in the real world because they're showing people, they're telegraphing to people that we're not actually going to measure how much we like you based on how helpful you are in helping Trump do what he's supposed to do. And Republicans are no strangers to this kind of contradiction, by the way. Lots of people who attack Trump for not doing enough on immigration are perfectly happy to defend Thomas Massie, a guy who sponsored a bill to expand the H-1B visa program, tried very hard to torpedo Trump's immigration centerpiece, the big, beautiful bill, which would have provided funding for his entire agenda. Like, he's obviously Massie at this point. He's just trying to obstruct Trump's agenda. He was one of only 2 Republicans who voted with Democrats to keep the government closed. And all these like freaking based people on the right are supporting him because they've been misled into believing that the only way to register criticism or dissent internally is to actively make the situation worse for Trump, worse for the Trump administration. And by that, I mean worse for us, worse for patriots. Like voters in Virginia and New Jersey, they think it's good enough to just have the right idea. I will win because my heart is true. I'm correct. I will certainly win in the marketplace of ideas. Everybody seems to forget that they're tied to the success or failure of the Trump administration. When you make criticisms of the Trump administration, the broader Trump movement, whether or not you like it, you are a part of the thing that's being criticized. That doesn't mean that you should never make criticisms. The only way to improve yourself is to admit what your issues are, obviously, but you still have to fix the issues after that. It's not that impressive to merely be able to identify a problem as such. What is impressive and what is important is solving a problem. I think a lot of people on the right, again, just human nature, they behave like fat people who like understand that they're fat, but then they always seem to find a way to never do anything about it. You know, you always find a way to avoid working out, avoid eating healthy for this reason, for that reason. I have to get it perfect. I have to find my perfect diet, my perfect workout plan. Maybe it's too inconvenient. Maybe it's too expensive. So then they start to think, well, why didn't the government do something about this when I was a kid? Why didn't my parents or the schools teach me just better habits? It's their fault. This all may be true. These might even be good points, but they will yap endlessly about different aspects of how, you know, they're fat, but really it's not my fault. It's XYZ. Anything to avoid actually addressing being fat in the real world and doing something about that. He will stay both fat and right forever. And it doesn't matter that he's fat because he's right. And that's really what matters to him. Trump is the only guy who achieves things in the world for you. That's literally true. Everything that we've had in the last year, the last 10 years, has been because of Donald Trump. Name me any victory, any deceleration of our country's degeneration that has been attributable to the Donald Trump political cause. It's a matter of fact. You want to win. If you want something to win, you're going to have to figure out how to work it through that, because that is the only path available to us at this time and in the foreseeable future, by the way. He's the highest executive of the federal government. He has hundreds of billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of employees at his disposal. He's the leader of the Republican Party and its tenuous majorities in the Congress, the Supreme Court, the political power and organization that he represents. That is critical to our success, just as it has been in the last 10 years, as it is now, and as it will be in the future. As a result, no matter what mistakes he makes, his agents may make, his success is essential in a way that all of his critics and all of their really freaking good ideas are just not. You can't make something work without Trump. It's just not going to happen. You're never going to improve the situation by undermining Trump, by declaring it's over, bringing up past grievances, no matter how bad they are, how right you may be. All of these things make the situation worse. Your situation worse. The matter is settled. Donald Trump is leading this thing, for better or worse. We settled this 10 years ago. No one else is going to emerge to make it better. They haven't. Everyone who's emerged and advertised themselves as the guy who's going to make it better is somebody who was actually just trying to help liberals win, trying to put us back on the plantation. Ron DeSantis tried this in 2021. He was Trump but based, Trump but effective. And then it turned out that he was, a plant by Fox News, neocon donors, etc. There's a reason that everybody has a bone to pick with Trump. And it's because he's the only chance we have right now of forwarding the patriot cause. It's just a matter of fact. And I think that everybody knows this on some level, which is why no one proposes copying what Trump actually did, which is staging a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, winning the primary, winning the election, seizing control of the party machinery, installing loyalists, installing your family, destroying dozens of political dynasties and careers, making everybody lose their mind. In other words, winning in their own right as a way to punish Trump or move past Trump. Nobody wants to win better than Trump. All they want to do is default to trying to help liberals win, basically. That might be the easy thing to do. That's the popular thing to do right now. You get to go on TV and you get to have your integrity complimented. Ooh, Thomas Massey, you're a good boy. You have integrity. You'll work against Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene, thank you for coming on 2 months after Charlie Kirk was assassinated to apologize about how you've been toxic in politics. It's cowardice. That's all it is. And liberals will help you. They'll cheer you on, of course, but that doesn't actually make anything better for Republicans and for patriots. You're betraying them, actually. So there are a lot of anti-Trump people on the right now who are just opportunists. And I don't even mean they're making money off it. Some people are, and they're making quite a lot of money off it, actually. I just mean they don't actually have any goal in mind when they make these attacks beyond protecting their egos or their online brands. Like, does anyone actually think that if Trump went away, finally, we would get based world? We would get this new based government? Like, no, liberals would just be back in charge again. And maybe there are a lot of people who are too stupid or too low impulse control or too subversive or too bitter to admit this, or at least admit that it would be a little bit bad. But the big figures actually leading the charge against Trump right now are obviously no longer trying to achieve anything in the real world. They are simply trying to obstruct him. They can trick their audiences who think, it's good enough to have good ideas. They can trick them into participating in this. But as Republicans who stayed home in Virginia and New Jersey for plenty of good reasons, whatever, as they're finding out, that doesn't actually count for much in the real world. Being right on the internet doesn't actually count for much in the real world. I expected to talk more about Trump's accomplishments. And I can do that, by the way, because some people just think, I don't know what planet these people are on. They think that this administration's literally done nothing. As I outlined in the beginning, of the 20 promises he made, 18 of them have either been completed or are underway right now. Only 2 are really still up in the air. So if you want me to do that, I can do that. To be honest with you, sometimes I don't feel the need, because it seems very obvious to me that when people are criticizing Trump, they're not doing it because they have legitimate criticisms. They're more just panicking and want me to validate their feelings and tell them that what you're experiencing right now is okay. And that's so valid and everything's going to be fine. So I don't know. Maybe they're not honest enough to admit that. The point being, Trump is waging a total war against DEI in universities and the government. He's clearing out corrupt prosecutors and FBI agents, using law enforcement to target our enemies. He's cutting off far-left activist groups from hundreds of billions of dollars that they have been using to make your neighborhood a shithole. Aligned people are now making important decisions instead of liberal bureaucrats. None of these things are going to be perfect. It was never supposed to be perfect. It was never advertised as going to be perfect. It's not like people with actual experience in these institutions are going to help Trump totally transform or destroy them. But usually the people making the most noise about how Trump isn't doing enough, they don't actually do anything at all themselves. They actually try to derail Trump doing things. So I'm not going to have an argument with you about whether or not it was good for Trump to win. It obviously was. You're stupid and dishonest if that's not where the conversation starts. I tried to start this conversation with putting ourselves on a level playing field. Let's admit it was good that we won in 2025. Let's admit that Democrats feel like they're on the back foot. Let's admit that Trump actually has done good stuff, even if not our perfect magic wand waving byproduct. You got someone like Dave Smith who says that we're living through the freaking Biden administration, just with a more secure border. This is not offering helpful criticism. He is actively lying to sabotage all of the good things that Trump has done and all of the good things that Trump has awarded to us, his base, because he's literally a leftist. So that's why he's doing this and pretending that he gives a shit about patriots, gives a shit about us, cares about the well-being of this country. He's literally a liberal. So there is no MAGA Civil War in any meaningful sense. You just have, like you've seen for the last 10 years in cyclical iterations, a bunch of low impulse control people have, for good reasons, for bad reasons, whatever, decided to align themselves with people who actively tried to elect Kamala Harris in 2024. I don't care if you can come up with a good freaking based reason to destroy the country and get us all killed. I'm not impressed by that. You actually need to help fix the country, which Trump can do, Trump's critics cannot do. Those are the lines. Look at MTG. MTG was supposed to be the future of MAGA. She was super based congressman from Georgia. I guess Trump didn't want her to run for Senate. So now all of a sudden, despite having come out during Christmas last year in support of the H-1B visas, when Vivek Ramaswamy decided to spend his Christmas not celebrating Christmas, not participating in the traditions of a Christian nation, but rather saying Americans by themselves are insufficient, we're inadequate, we need to have H-1B immigration, Marjorie Taylor Greene came to back him up. She was in support of the program as well in 2018. I think she was talking about it. So now she comes out and she puts a bill forward because she's totally freaking anti-H-1B. She goes on CNN to apologize for her participation in toxic politics, saying it was wrong of her. She just wants people to come together. People who criticize Trump for not doing enough for the right have this curious habit of cozying up to the left, don't you think? Really makes you wonder what their actual motives are. When 2 months after Charlie Kirk is assassinated, Marjorie Taylor Greene goes on CNN to say that it's her fault. She was being toxic. People need to come together. And then she gets off air and CNN goes back to inciting more of this, to saying Charlie Kirk deserved this. Republicans deserve this. I don't know if you are understanding what's going on here. She is flipping. These people are flipping and taking a deal. They are retreating. They are betraying us. They are betraying the people who elected them to represent them by saying, I'm scared of what the left is going to do when they get back into power. So I'm going to flip. I'm going to take a deal with them, and I'm going to now provide value to them by making it harder for Donald Trump, by making it harder for patriots. That is what I am going to do, because at some point between the Trump arrest and the Kirk assassination, this all became real to me. I guess it was just a game before. Now it's all real, and I can't hang, and I'm scared. So I'm going to go grovel and apologize like a little bitch on CNN and piss on Charlie Kirk's grave because I think I'm too good to get a bullet in the neck. It is a level of conduct I have never seen. It is incomprehensible evil. I can look at behavior from people and know it's immoral, but still understand what I am seeing. The level of treachery and deceit and lying I am seeing from these people is literally incomprehensible to me, especially considering the stakes, especially what we saw happen 2 months ago. And they are just pissing on it for themselves, either because they personally benefit from it, because they want to start a Rumble podcast, or because they're cowards, in which case they should have never been involved with this, let alone elevated to these positions in the first place. I've been around for a while now. I saw this happen in 2017. I saw it happen in 2021. In 2023, it's every 2 years like clockwork, I guess. You're abandoning ship when Trump is the only game in town. Who's your guy? You have candidates? What's your platform? Do you have the ability whatsoever to fight the Leviathan that is the left? You have nothing. You have shit. You have going on CNN to cry to the left and beg for mercy. Well, okay, yeah, we know that. You don't have to get mad, all right? We're just trying to show Trump that we don't like this by burning his hats, by insulting the integrity of the man who took a bullet for you, by pissing on the grave of the man who took a bullet for you and his political project. You acknowledge, apparently, we're just trying to make Trump better. You acknowledge that our fates are tied to the success of this administration, right? You're just trying to make it better, right? So why wouldn't you be helpful? Why wouldn't you be involved? Or at least the very least thing you could do, disagree productively. What are you doing? Where's your law degree? What exactly is your contribution? Neocons are doing that, by the way. That's why they're loving this right now. Neocons love this. You are doing them a favor. You are being outflanked by people who actually understand politics and don't treat it like this opportunity for self-indulgent oppositional grandstanding to build a personal brand for themselves when they launch their Rumble podcast. How the fuck are you being outflanked by Lindsey Graham? You've got the right opinion on every issue, but no ability to execute on that. How is that any different from being completely useless? People are just building up brands for themselves, brands for their favorite based influencers who don't actually give a shit about any of this. Well, we have to. Sorry, I don't go down that easily. I'm not a coward. And if you talk to these people, by the way, it's the same cowardice and the same defeatism that it's always been, except now it's just painted based. It's in a based tint. They'll say, if you push them long enough, they say, none of this matters anyway, man. The country's going to collapse in a few years anyway, man. We just have to buy gold and Bitcoin, man. There's no voting our way out of this, dude. It's no coincidence that's their line. It's no coincidence that that's the line that you're seeing everywhere on social media. You think you're voting your way out of this? Dude, that's so edgy. What? The sheeple think that they can vote, but you're based and you know that you actually can't vote your way out of this, and the real solution is bitching online and doing nothing to help the cause you claim to care about so much? But that's the op, right? If young men swing 40 points to support Trump, you're not putting that toothpaste back in the tube. You're just not. You're not going to make them back into libtards or make them into libtards. It doesn't matter how much propaganda you inundate them with. But what you can do is you can push them over their own skis. All of a sudden now, we're allowed to talk about all these things that used to get us banned, used to get me banned on social media. Because conveniently, the conclusion that people are drawing or are being made to draw is that, hey man, actually, Trump sucks. We shouldn't support Trump. But this time, it's because of base reasons. We just need to start our own thing. We need to go off the reservation, man. We need to freaking come together. Do you think our enemies care if you don't support Trump, but it's for your own little base reason because you're so base? They're still coming after you. They're still not going to let you walk away from this. We have one window here, one path forward, for better or worse. We're not going to vote our way out of this. We did it before, did we not? We bought ourselves time. Did that not happen? Did we not buy ourselves time? Did we not slow things down? Did we not make progress? Am I just lying to you because I'm bored? They're trying to end the midterms. They're trying to handicap the second Trump administration. And by extension, they are trying to prevent J.D. Vance from becoming president in 2028. That is all this is. It is the most transparent op I have seen in my 7 years now of doing this. Do you think Fox News actually gives a shit about H-1Bs and immigration? Give me a break. You think they're suddenly better than Trump on immigration? They're pressing Trump on this because now they've woken up and they're epic and they're based and Trump is not? Or is it more likely that they just finally found an effective way to turn their viewership against Trump like they've been trying to do anyway for 10 years? I implore you to think. And I think this would be easier to recognize if people hadn't created this like climate of hysteria around politics, which is understandable given the current environment, given the literally life or death stakes. But still, this is not helpful at all. We need cooler heads to prevail. Liberal discourse is shaped by liberal politicians. Conservative discourse is shaped by conservative media personalities. There are benefits and there are drawbacks to this arrangement, but ultimately the people driving liberal discussions have to win in order to keep their jobs, right? Where sometimes, conservatives can benefit themselves personally from doing things that make us lose, the conservative cause lose, even, if it makes all of us suffer. It benefits them personally, that's enough. It's only a sense of responsibility that keeps this incentive structure from tanking things for conservatives. A sense of, oh, well, I'll just do the right thing. It's fine. Okay, well, clearly that has disappeared in recent months. Clearly people are not willing to be team players. They're not willing to do the right thing. They think that always chimping is the move. That's not actually good advice if you can't recognize what is a real thing to chimp out about versus what is not actually a real thing to chimp out about, if what you're demanding is not even realistic or possible, or, as is often the case, you claim that you are only making criticisms in a productive way when in reality they're extremely non-productive, or even if your concern is addressed, there's still going to be like permanent damage afterwards to the entire environment, to the entire ecosystem. After that like 50-year mortgage comment, Vance comes out and he reminds people, mass deportations are obviously a priority of this administration. Obviously, that will lower the demand for housing, thereby the cost of housing. So the chimping that everybody felt so good about didn't actually prompt a change in policy or anything. Really, it just made the vice president come out and say, hey, calm down. What are you talking about? But I can tell you for a fact that the good people we actually have in the administration didn't appreciate everybody melting down hysterically online and declaring that MAGA's freaking dead and it's freaking over. Freaking out over nothing, literally nothing. Dad had to come in and tell everybody to stop crying. I don't think there's ever been an administration more open to far out crazy right-wing ideas or whatever than Trump's administration. You will never be better represented in government than you are right now. You haven't been if you're alive listening to me right now, and there's no way forward that you're going to be better represented by. You can talk like a normal person. You can make normal arguments. You can express normal concerns. Please do these things. And when there are problems, you can work to solve them. You have to, in fact, because you are as invested in the success or failure of this thing as the people you are attacking. This is not just something you're watching on TV. This is not just something you're using to entertain yourself with. In many cases, however, it is. Your internal disposition actually does matter a lot. Panic is literally never productive. Doom spiraling is literally never productive. This is even more true, by the way, when times are actually bad. People love doing this like Civil War, extremism, accelerationism, collapse LARP, while being unable to even navigate basic, widely used social media apps without displaying the kind of volatility and instability that would make them worse than useless in any kind of real world collapse scenario. But that's what it is. A lot of right-wing discourse operates as this like support group for unstable people who are using it for a chance to like air out their anxieties and their fears about the world. And what if this happens? I'm really freaking nervous. Can you tell me that you love me? Can you tell me that everything's going to be okay, please? I just don't care. I'm sorry. I do not care. We have to win no matter how you feel about it. Facts do not care about your feelings. And in some way, we are lucky that all these people really do seem to derive a sense of pleasure from like sealing themselves off in these containment zones online. But honestly, much of this sort of like venom that is coming from the online right is truly driven by this just like deep hatred for anyone who refuses to join them in that ghetto, in that containment zone. Being able to control your own responses and resentments is really the only thing a man can control at the end of the day. Being in control of your emotions, that's baseline. So if someone can't even do that, like, you really shouldn't be listening to their thoughts about how they would control everything, if they were put in charge. Like, they would ruin it. They would literally ruin it, just like they ruin themselves. Think about how good Trump is doing. He's doing pretty good, but it's not perfect. Imagine you put one of these people at the helm, right? So we've seen the state now at this point, if you've been around for a while, of how this tends to play out. These older iterations of the online right. Again, it's cyclical. Time is a flat circle. If you think there is a level of dissatisfaction or epic radical signaling that we can do on the internet with our phones that is eventually going to generate a real world political movement with a massive freaking uprising of the people, I'm here to tell you that you are wrong. You can end up posting in your ghetto all you want. You can end up reiterating the same bitter negativity, freaking base, red pill, whatever, for literally years and years and years to absolutely no end. This is not speculative. There are people right now doing this whose names you don't even know. Big names, big guys, smart guys. This is what they're doing because they couldn't get it together. They're bright ideas, bright as they are. They're not coming to bail us out. Trump is coming to bail us out. Vance is coming to bail us out after that. And we're going to have to keep winning in the real world until all of this is just a bad memory. And that's exactly what it will be. That's why I said 2 weeks from now, this is not going to matter. A little hyperbolic. It's going to take a little bit longer than that. However, this is clearly the path. And this is what's going to continue to deliver victories for us. Trump said something dumb. Okay. I don't care. I care about all the good things he does. And I really care about all the bad things he prevents from happening. I want to help him do more good things. And I want to help prevent him from making mistakes, from creating bad optics scenarios and sound bites. And with that goal in mind, me crying on the floor, pissing myself because I'm sad and freaking scared about the state of the world, that's not really going to contribute very much. Even if a bunch of people on the internet will applaud me for doing so because they're also curled up in a ball pissing themselves on their bathroom floor. So anyway, people mock trust the plan. I mock trust the plan because it's funny, but I hope that eventually enough of you realize that you are the plan. When we talk about trusting the plan, that is you. Your fate is tied to it, whether or not you like it, whether or not you realize it. And it's crazy to think about how much has been accomplished in the last 10 years. We can cover that more if you'd like. Just let me know. It's crazy to think about how much more we're going to accomplish in the 10 years that follow this. And at a certain point, you just have to trust yourself. You have to trust your allies. You have to trust our beloved President Donald J. Trump and how far you've all come together as one big, beautiful plan. And if you don't, you're just going to run around in circles until you eventually go insane and lose. And a lot of people are going to choose that because it's easy and everybody's doing it right now. It's hip. It's the hot new thing in town, spurging out and losing your mind. Again, it comes in cycles. And that's going to be their loss for a very long time. If they had it their way, put it this way, if they had it their way, they would keep making Instagram reels and waging war on this administration and then claim vindication about the whole freaking political system being corrupt, man. When Trump gets out of office and everything really goes back to normal and we lose, they would love to just be the guy standing atop the pile of ashes saying, I freaking told you so. I was freaking right, man. The whole thing's freaking corrupt, man. So I have no patience for that. I have no tolerance for that. I like to be aligned with reality. So MAGA now, MAGA forever. Planikins will triumph, and that's that. So we're going to take a break here, but before that, I have to tell you about our cool new friends over at Craft Co. Bourbons chase trends. Flying Ace chases legacy. It's just a different ball game. This is straight bourbon the way it was meant to be. It's bold, it's balanced, it's pro-patriot, without apology. And that's as far as it goes. There's no gimmicks, no fluff. It's just real whiskey made for people who still believe in craftsmanship, who still believe in excellence, and simply just doing things the right way. So whether you're winding down after a long day, trying to forget about that girl you fumbled during COVID, hanging out with the boys, pissing yourself on the bathroom floor, Flying Ace will get you to where you need to go every time. It's about heritage. It's about homeland. And I'm usually not even one of these whiskey guys or whatever. But it doesn't get more American than this, right? Straight bourbon whiskey. Literally dates back to the first Thanksgiving. So if that sounds like you're poor, go online to flyingacespirits.com. That is flyingacespirits.com. Use code BLAZE for free shipping. I think I'll actually pour a glass here and we can demonstrate what the product actually does as we continue our show and we get into the point of the show, the future of the content, etc. So, BRB. All right. We are back on the John Doyle Show. We're going to talk a little bit of inside baseball, I suppose, because I told you I would. I figured you'd be curious. So I'm going to kind of go over the evolution here, some of the plans here, and then also answer some of the like questions that I anticipate people will have. Originally, my idea was I was going to like go shot for shot. I was going to take like 4 shots of this because I thought it would be funny to demonstrate the effect of the product. But my producer has told me that this maybe would not be good optics. And so already I'm partnered with a network and I'm already cucking, even though the network is a close friend of mine. It's what it happens. That's how, the tentacles, they get everywhere. They get into your friends' minds. The inhibitor chip is broken. But we'll just pour a little glass here. We'll see. If it's bad, I'll tell you. That's good crystal right there. You hear that? This is one of the last manufacturers of traditional hand-cut English crystal. I'm not even like a whiskey guy. I know that I'm setting myself up for the, cigar and whiskey. I'm a real man. I'm a real boy. So I apologize, but, they sent me whiskey. They're like, hey, is this good? If so, run it on your show. So I'm like, all right. So, yeah. It's 11 a.m. for what it's worth. I don't know if we're going to commit to drinking like more than that, but we'll see. Cheers to, ooh, actually, hold on. All right, that's pretty good. That'll put some hair on your chest. I think it's like 84. That's not bad at all. All right, hey, cheers to total patriot victory. Cheers to what's to come. Cheers to the great American century. And let's go through some inside baseball. Why don't we? That's smooth. All right, hey, if you want to send me more alcohol, you want to see some real interesting content, go for it, dude. Okay, hold on. Bad product. The cork doesn't go back in. Okay, there we go. All right. So let's once again wind the clocks back to 2018. You are me. You are John Doyle. You're a young whippersnapper. You have been very interested in politics for a few years now. You see an opportunity for things to change because of the election of Donald Trump. You are dissatisfied with the state of Republican messaging. You refuse to go continue volunteering at your local GOP office in Oakland County. And you are just wanting to get involved. I don't know. I figured that it would be like a good inflection point of kind of what I was already good at. Like, people tend to find me relatively entertaining. They think that I have relatively interesting things to say. I used to make like little home movies anyway. I thought it would be like a good inflection point of those skills and interests to just kind of like start making content. As you may have gathered throughout the years, I do not possess a very important impulse or disposition for this job, which is self-promotion. I am very willing to like throw my hat in the arena when I think there's like something important that needs to be said, but the job of like the influencer or whatever to just like always be like putting out content. This is my take. Here's what I'm doing on Instagram. Like, I just like don't have that in me. And so for a very long time, I treated like content creation as what I said in my last video is like this gay little art project where I'm going to do it when I want to do it, exactly how I want to do it. And I'm going to be a perfectionist. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to yell into the camera every thought I have about like every idea on a singular topic. And I'm going to publish my magnum opus and it's going to be great. And people are going to watch it. They'll like it or whatever. And that obviously like worked out. I think really what caused a problem for me was actually the anti-pornography dissertation, which is funny because you develop a problem and an addiction in service of trying to help people with a problem and an addiction, because what that did, that was like the first video where, I'd already been making like longer content, but that was the first video where I really got to just put all of my thoughts on something into one video and just put out this giant piece of content and think like, this is my magnum opus. This is awesome. And people really liked that. They liked how thorough it was. They liked how long it was. And so I kind of got like addicted to that style of making content as opposed to when I started out where I was making, okay, AOC said something crazy. I'm going to do an 8-minute video on that or, stuff like that. And that's why in the last few years, people have said, used to make more content. It was also less sophisticated. There was less research that went into it. Frankly, it was just less developed because I hadn't read as much. I hadn't done as much. I had less experience. So you were getting more uploads per week, but the content you were getting was shorter. It wasn't as good. And so anyway, all of which to say, I knew when I started out that eventually I was going to have to just like have, a show with my own name. But the problem with that is it's difficult to get people to listen to a long form show based on your name. If they have no idea who you are, they don't like want to trust you on certain topics. So the idea was always to like, develop a sense of trust, develop an audience by making videos on singular topics on YouTube. And eventually over time, people would be like, okay, I don't know who this guy is, but I have an interest in this issue or that issue or this story. I'll click on this. I'll watch the video. Maybe I like it. Maybe I don't. Over time, you can develop trust. You can build an audience. You can do things like that. And eventually I was going to make the switch into, instead of making, videos on singular topics, I will now do a show where every day I am there. I am giving my issue or giving my take on the issues of the day, and I'll still deliver it the way I want to deliver it. And it'll still be, at the level of depth I would like it to be. However, it doesn't have to be this long, drawn-out thing with everything I think about something put into one video, never to revisit again. And it also doesn't have to be something that is contained to that singular topic. We can discuss other things that are going on at the time. I think that's very important for keeping people informed, keeping people sane, because as I knew, even 2018 and before then, when I was thinking about, I should throw my hat in the ring, messaging is very bad. And what I see happening right now is the pre-Trump sort of conservative media environment trying to heal itself. And I think that I have been actually very reckless in how I have adapted to that, because I stayed committed to my gay little art project and how I wanted to make content and how I enjoyed doing it. And in the meantime, we've just had a lot of very bad messaging ascendant, both from people who are completely retarded and from people who are neocons. And both of these parties are collaborating, trying to put patriots back in the box, essentially. Both have an interest in doing so. And so over time, I knew eventually I was going to have to make that transition or whatever. It was just a matter of when. Now we have something going on separately from content that I had been working on, and I managed to bring it to fruition. And so it was just a matter of okay, now I'm not going to have time to handle the administrative side of things, the business side of things. I need to be able to just come in, give my opinion and leave, and have my team of people, upload the content, post the content, do whatever. I'm not going to be able to be so intimately involved as I have been since literally day one, where I am doing everything you see on screen, everything you hear on screen is either directly because of me or because I told somebody exactly how to do it and they did it perfectly well. And so then it ended up being included in the content. And so at that point, it's okay, I should probably partner with somebody. So I could have, partnered with, guys I know, whatever, but I thought that it would be good to be a part of a network, because I do think that there is a good thing about the sort of editorial standard that's maintained by certain networks. And I disagree intensely with the editorial standard made or provided by other networks. And I kind of wanted to hitch my wagon to something that was taking itself more seriously and that could really compete for the king of the hill, so to speak, with the way that conservative media is evolving. And so this is the problem too, is I know that people will see, this and they'll be John Doyle sold out. He partnered with a network, whatever. So let me tell you some more inside baseball. The dirty little secret about partnering with a network is that there's no reason to do it if you are purely motivated by money. People have realized that it's not actually beneficial to, or rather I should say, it's not very difficult to set up a microphone and a camera and, upload videos. People who are now independent are perfectly capable of doing that. It's not very difficult. I was independent doing it myself for years. It's very simple. But what it does do is it allows you to immediately 2 to 5 times your income, because a network is obviously going to take money. That's how they make money from whatever your content is generating. So again, I know these people personally. Pretty much every time in the last 5 years, we've seen somebody who was partnered with a network who all of a sudden realized that they didn't want their free speech to be censored anymore, and they're going independent, and finally I can speak my mind about all of these important things that the network wasn't allowing me to say. It's just bullshit. They're lying to you. I'm sorry. It's just not true. It's because when you leave the network, all of a sudden you're not having to split money with them. You're not having to do whatever, so there's that. And then also, in a way, you have a sense of more freedom with a network, in the sense that now, because I am working with a company, I have to make content. And because I have to make content, I am able to just do whatever I want. And unfortunately, as we've learned, when I am working totally by myself, I am not going to be able to get out of my own head and do things in a way that is not exactly how I want them to be done. But if I'm with a network and I have to make content, now I can do things exactly how I want them to be done in a different sense, where if I'm by myself and I want to talk about something, I have to think, okay, well, is this going to perform well? Are people going to like this? Blah, blah, blah. But now if I've got, content I have to make, I can kind of experiment in a way, because I'm oh man, well, if this doesn't perform well, I'm still doing my job. and I'm still going to get paid, and I know my audience is still going to like it, so I don't really have to worry so much about if it's going to be like viral friendly, you know, if it's going to be trend worthy. And this, by the way, is going to be especially useful with another project we're working on that is going to, without giving too much away, be the sort of like deep dive stuff into very interesting topics, very important topics that I have always enjoyed the most and that no one else is doing right now. And so we're going to get to do stuff like that too. But as of right now, I'm very happy with this. I'm very content with this. And I've got the inhibitor chip, right? Literally what the agreement is it's an agreement between Blaze Media and its agreement with my media company. And so my media company and their media company have made an agreement. So I'm working with all my own guys. I'm working with all of my friends, guys I've known for years. So there's literally no oversights over anything that we're doing, anything that we're talking about. All our job is to deliver to Blaze, to this company, ready to go out of the box content. And if they don't like it, damn, that's crazy. I guess we'll try again next time. Like, you know, they can choose not to work with it, but they can't be like, you know, you can't talk about it. It's literally, it's not in the agreement. They can't do that. And moreover, if they tried, like, they know that that would just make them look bad. And so they have no interest in doing that. I obviously would not have gotten involved into this if I, you know, feared that that would be a problem. But that's like what people want to say. People want to believe that, like, you know, the networks are controlling what people say. And, you know, that turns out to not actually be the case. It turns out when people like leave to pursue free speech, they just start talking about like insane things and, you know, the penises or lack thereof on like the French president's wife, and just like crazy stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like the secret there, is people want to say that, they want to believe this. But again, I've known these guys, the guys I made the deal with, for 6 years now. I ambushed them, actually. I attended a normal, like, hey, I'm in town, let's get lunch kind of meeting with the president. Gaston Mooney, he's a great guy. I've known him for, again, 6 years. And they'd wanted to work with me for a while in varying capacities. And I was always kind of like, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of like doing this. I'm enjoying it. I don't really see the benefit right now. And so I just like was going out to lunch with this guy after I found out that this other thing I was doing was coming to fruition, and I was going to need to find a way to take a step back. And I just like ambushed him at a lunch, and I was like, hey, here's exactly what I want to do. What do you think? I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to work with my friends. I want to do blah, 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 blah. Thoughts? And he was like, yeah, cool. And I was like, okay, what's the catch? I was like waiting for the catch. He was like, oh, let me run it by, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, so we're running it by blah, blah, blah. We're dealing with it. It just like worked. They just like signed off on it. I kept waiting for the catch for like the part where, you know, it's really bad and evil, and I have to like collect my 30 pieces of silver and like sell out and be told I can't do XYZ. That just like simply never happened. And I could do the like Jeremy Boring style like contract read, and they wouldn't get mad at me, and I wouldn't like, you know, feel weird about doing that. However, I also don't feel like I have to do that, because like at this point, the people who like hate me and want me to kill myself are obviously going to have a problem with this regardless. Like, they'd have a problem with anything I do. Whereas all of my friends, people who have known me for years, my family, people who actually have my best interest at heart, people who love my content, they're like, this is a good idea. And actually, you should have done this like several years ago, because now your voice will be out there. You'll be making more content. You'll be making better content. So I fail to see how this is a bad thing. And if you are suspicious, then I guess stay tuned. And, you know, if you detect that I've, you know, completely sold out and I am no longer doing the job that you've expected me to do, then, you know, that's fine. You know, you can comment, tell me you hate me, tell me you want me to kill myself. It's your prerogative. But I do think it's important for the pre-Trump media environment to be completely relegated back to the pits that spawned it. I don't think that we can allow them to win. And I was sort of watching how 2024 played out and who was very effective at forwarding the cause, who was not. And I'll put it this way. The base, 90% of people really don't understand the voices that they're listening to and whether they are actually in support of their interests or whether they're not. I can go to a mainstream Republican event and I can see guy number one give a speech where he's basically calling for the replacement of everybody in the audience cheering for him. My objection to that speech got me put on a blacklist one time, actually, for 3 years. But because I'm a diplomat and I don't believe in spurging out publicly and I solve things behind the scenes, that's no longer a problem. That guy can give a speech and give the people he's advocating to displace, he can get those people to give him a standing ovation. And then we can have somebody else get up there and give a good speech where he's advocating for the opposite. He's advocating for nationalism, patriot representation, and he can likewise get that standing ovation. Now, we can call that good-hearted nature of our base. We can call that maybe a little bit of naive disposition, whatever you want to call it, it is true that we need patriot representation in the media. It is true that as a patriot, I have been doing a disservice to my fellow Americans by not being on air more to tell the truth about America to Americans, which is now what I'm going to be doing. And I should have done this a while ago. I'll do it now. I can't take back the past. All I can do is just, I don't know, do better in the future. So I can't promise you everything, but I can promise you one thing. Whatever resources I have at my disposal, whatever team I have at my disposal, a bunch of good people, very cool friends, like we are just simply like not going to allow these people to ruin everything that we've spent the last 10 years building. We will die before we allow that to happen, because that is the example that has been set for us. That is the example that we have to live up to. We have a stake in this. We want things to be better. We want to have families. We want to have a life in this country. And so we have to be serious about things. And so insofar as I can contribute to that, I will do that. I will fall in line. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. I'll probably address this more. I should have maybe written out something, anticipating what people were going to say, but I'm frankly just much more interested in talking about politics on the internet, as I've done for quite some time. And we have to do it because people just don't want to assimilate to victory. That's one thing. I tweeted about this, and I may talk about this more. One of the most important political books I've ever read has actually nothing to do with politics. It's called Sellout by Dan Ozzie, who's a rock journalist. And what the book covers is the period in, I guess you'd say rock history between like 1993 and 2007, where in the wake of the success of the Nevermind album, all of these like mainstream record labels were hunting for, punk bands, alt rock bands, emo bands, things that could capture similar lightning in bottles and bring them into mainstream success. And so you had all these people who were very involved in these sort of niche subcultures surrounding these bands. And they didn't really have too much else going on for them. They were kind of losers, and they were kind of antisocial, and they were kind of just like generally dysfunctional people. But the one thing they had going on, which they based their identity in, was that they had correct music taste. They had better music taste than the normies who did not have good music taste. But then when this music that they claimed to love so much all of a sudden became mainstream, they simply spurged out. They spurged out and declared that all of these bands have personally betrayed them. Everything is over. It's fake. They sold out. I'm going to piss myself. I'm going to cry. And they became like permanently bitter and resentful and just like blamed these bands for everything. That you took my identity away from me, man. And so that's the thing. It's like, people will see this and they'll accuse me of like, I sold out. I did X, Y, Z. I did whatever. I am assimilating to the mainstream. That is a good thing. If you want our ideas to be mainstream, you need people in the mainstream representing those ideas. That's what Donald Trump showed us. That's what Charlie Kirk showed us. This is the model. It works. It is a good thing that I can do what I can do. I can talk about what I can talk about, and I can strike a deal at 25 years old with one of the biggest right-wing media companies, probably one of the best right-wing media companies, and I can make myself a part of that, being who I am. That is actually a good thing for us. And if you don't see that, I think it's because you'd rather be correct standing on a pile of ashes, right? That's what these people want to do. It's like they say, you can either be dissident or you can be right. You can always frame yourself as the edgy outsider. And then when that identity as being the edgy outsider is threatened because it's time for you to actually step up to the plate, you spurg out, declare that you've been betrayed, freak out, piss yourself on the bathroom floor. Or you can actually assimilate into the mainstream. You can assimilate to victory, get things done, move the ball down the field. I tend to be in the latter camp. If you're not, it is what it is. So that's where we're at. I'm excited about it. We're going to make a lot of really good content. We're going to make better content than we've ever made. We're going to make more content than we've ever made. And if you support that, I'm with you. If you don't support that, feel free to leave. But I know what my job is. I know what my mission is. And I know that it has the endorsement of everybody, not only who I respect, but who actually, has this country's best interest at heart and my best interest at heart, which, the haters and losers can't exactly say. So anyway, that's the explanation. We'll see you in a couple days, and I'm probably going to, I guess, take another break here, because that's not what you do when you have a show. You have segments and breaks. So, BRB. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still here, we'll get you out of here. But first, we have to let you know that if you are listening on audio, continue to do that. Leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed this 5-star podcast. If you did not enjoy it, then keep your thoughts to yourself because you will hurt my feelings and then I will become a danger to myself. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how correct I am and how aligned I am with the universe. Or let me know how incorrect I am and how mentally handicapped I am. Whatever your thoughts are, I would love nothing more than to read them all individually and with a great level of focus and intensity and care for every character that you take the time to enter. We will see you on Wednesday. How exciting. You never thought you'd hear that from me, right?